Most people say they want success. They say they want growth. They say they want a better life. But very few people are truly dedicated. Because dedication is not excitement. It is not temporary motivation. It is not posting goals online. And it is definitely not working hard for 3 days before giving up the moment life becomes uncomfortable. Real dedication is much deeper than that. It is the ability to keep showing up when nobody is watching, when results are invisible, when progress feels slow, when your emotions are unstable, when your mind starts questioning everything. And that is exactly why so many people never reach their potential. Not because they are incapable, not because they are unlucky, but because they never train themselves to stay committed long enough to become dangerous. Modern life has destroyed people's ability to stay dedicated. Everything today is built around instant stimulation, fast entertainment, fast validation, fast pleasure, fast distraction. People are constantly consuming things that make them feel productive without actually improving their lives. And over time, the brain becomes addicted to short-term comfort. That is why focusing feels difficult. That is why consistency feels painful. That is why discipline feels exhausting. Because dedication requires something most people avoid: discomfort. And the uncomfortable truth is this: a weak mind always searches for escape. A dedicated mind searches for progress. There is a huge difference between being interested in something and being dedicated to it. When you are only interested, you work when it feels convenient. You move when motivation appears. You stay consistent only when emotions cooperate. But dedication changes your mindset completely. You stop depending on feelings. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. Because you finally understand something powerful. Your future cannot be built on temporary emotions. Some days you will feel motivated. Some days you will feel tired. Some days you will doubt yourself completely. But dedicated people continue anyway. That is what separates average people from people who transform their lives. Most people underestimate how much their daily habits control their future. Small actions repeated every day quietly build identity. Every time you quit early, your mind learns weakness. Every time you avoid discomfort, your brain becomes more comfortable with avoidance. Every time you break promises to yourself, self-respect slowly decreases. And eventually, people stop trusting themselves. That is one of the most damaging things that can happen mentally. Because once you stop believing your own words, everything becomes harder. You start procrastinating more. You stop taking goals seriously. You lose confidence in your ability to change. This is why dedication is not only about achievement. It is about rebuilding trust with yourself. Every time you stay committed despite difficulty, you send a message to your mind: I can rely on myself. And that changes everything. Dedication builds mental toughness in silence. Not overnight. Not dramatically. Not through motivational quotes. But through repeated moments where you choose growth instead of comfort. Most people think successful individuals are simply more talented. But many times they are simply more consistent. They stayed focused longer. They tolerated discomfort longer. They remained committed after excitement disappeared. Because the truth is, motivation is temporary by nature. Nobody feels inspired every single day. Even highly disciplined people experience doubt, exhaustion, frustration, and mental resistance. The difference is that they do not allow emotions to control their direction. That is where real power begins. The moment you stop treating feelings like commands. Your brain naturally wants comfort. It wants the easiest option, the quickest pleasure, the path with the least resistance. That is normal human psychology. But growth rarely feels comfortable in the beginning. Studying when you are distracted feels difficult. Training when you feel lazy feels difficult. Staying patient during slow progress feels difficult. And because it feels difficult, most people assume something is wrong. But discomfort is often a sign that growth is happening. A lot of people destroy their future because they constantly chase temporary relief. They scroll instead of focusing. They quit instead of adapting. They distract themselves instead of confronting reality. And slowly years disappear. Potential disappears. Not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked dedication. The dangerous thing about inconsistency is that it usually feels harmless in the moment. Skipping one day feels small. Wasting one evening feels harmless. Avoiding one responsibility feels easy. But repeated small decisions create entire lifestyles. And eventually people wake up frustrated, confused, and disappointed with themselves without realizing that their daily patterns created that reality. Dedication protects you from becoming controlled by temporary impulses. It teaches you patience. It teaches emotional control. It teaches self-respect. Because dedicated people understand something most people ignore. Big results are usually built through boring repetition, not constant excitement. Repetition. The same effort, the same discipline, the same standards, again and again. And most people cannot handle repetition because they are addicted to novelty. They want instant transformation, instant confidence, instant success. But real improvement is slower than social media makes it appear. And this is where many people mentally collapse. They work hard for a short time, expect immediate results, and become discouraged when reality moves slower than their expectations. But dedication means staying committed even when visible rewards are delayed. That is emotional maturity. To continue building something before the results arrive. To trust the process without needing constant proof. Because the reality is, many important things in life grow quietly at first. Confidence grows quietly. Discipline grows quietly. Skills grow quietly. Mental strength grows quietly. Before the world sees external results, internal transformation happens first. And most people quit during that invisible phase. That is why dedication is rare. People love the idea of success, but they do not love the repeated sacrifice required to create it. They want the reward without the process. But the process is the entire point. Dedication changes who you become mentally. It teaches you how to continue despite discomfort, how to stay focused despite distraction, how to remain disciplined despite emotional instability. And those skills matter far beyond success. Because life itself becomes easier when your mind becomes stronger. A dedicated person does not panic every time life becomes difficult. They adapt. They continue. They recover faster because their identity is built on consistency instead of emotion. Now here is the reality most people avoid hearing. Nobody is coming to force you to improve. Nobody can build your habits for you. Nobody can study for you. Nobody can fix your mindset for you. At some point, personal responsibility becomes unavoidable. And that truth can feel heavy. But it is also empowering. Because it means your future is still changeable. You do not need perfect genetics. You do not need constant motivation. You do not need to become somebody else. You need stronger commitment. You need to stop depending on temporary feelings and start building reliable habits. And that starts small. Wake up with intention. Reduce distractions. Finish what you start. Keep promises to yourself. Spend less time seeking validation and more time improving privately. Do not focus on becoming perfect. Focus on becoming consistent. Because consistency builds identity. And identity shapes behavior. When you repeatedly act with discipline, eventually your brain stops seeing it as punishment and starts seeing it as part of who you are. That is when dedication becomes powerful. Not when it feels exciting, but when it becomes normal. When effort becomes your standard instead of your exception. And understand this clearly. Dedication is not about working non-stop until you burn out. Real dedication also includes patience, balance, recovery, and self-awareness. Because sustainable growth matters more than temporary intensity. A person who improves slowly for years will always outperform somebody who burns bright for 1 month and disappears. Long-term thinking changes everything. Most people destroy progress because they think emotionally instead of strategically. They want immediate results, immediate confidence, immediate proof. But life rewards patience more than people realize. The people who quietly stay committed usually become the people others suddenly call successful. But there was nothing sudden about it. It was built through invisible effort, repeated discipline, daily dedication. So if you feel behind in life, if you feel frustrated, if you feel mentally tired, remember this. Your current situation does not have to define your future. But your daily habits eventually will. Dedication is not something you are born with. It is something you build. One decision at a time. One disciplined action at a time. One uncomfortable moment at a time. And the moment you stop running from discomfort, you begin developing the mindset capable of changing your life. At the end of the day, dedication is really about becoming someone who refuses to quit on themselves. Someone who keeps moving even during doubt. Someone who continues improving without constant attention or applause. Someone who understands that real growth takes time. Because the people who achieve meaningful things are usually not the loudest people. They are the most committed. They stay focused when others get distracted. They stay patient when others become emotional. They stay consistent when others give up. And eventually, that consistency becomes power. So ask yourself honestly, are you merely interested in changing your life? Or are you truly dedicated to it? Because that answer changes everything. And if this message connected with you, take a moment to reflect. What is one area of your life where you know you need stronger dedication?